Yes, we could
Daniel,
hear
I
you.
cannot hear you. I guess you are muted.
I'm not muted.
Okay, I say we move on. If someone has any questions for Gonçalo, perhaps you can leave those in the chat. There, probably he can read them and
I cannot
reply.
hear anyone. I don't know what's happening.
Your sound is off.
Let's see my sound settings.
Okay, if no questions for Gonçalo, then I suggest, because we are already late on our initial delay, that we move on to the next speaker. Daniel, can you do the honors?
Yes. So the next session, the next two sessions actually are about the experience of data stewardship in the Netherlands, and our invited speaker is Maaike Jetten. She's currently the community manager data stewardship at the Dutch Tech Center for Life Sciences, DTL, and Health RI in Utrecht, the Netherlands. Before, she has worked as coordinator research data management open science at Radboud University, also in the Netherlands, and has set up a research data management support at the library. She also was data steward at the Institute for Management Research at that university. And now, as part of Elixir Converge, Maaike is developing training materials and organizing training sessions focused on data management and data stewardship. So welcome, Maaike.
Thank you, Daniel. I hope you do hear me.
Yes.
Yes, perfect. And you can see my slide deck as well, hopefully.
As well.
Yes, good. We're off to go. So thank you for the nice introduction. So I can quickly move to the second slide. I don't need to introduce myself anymore. This will be two presentations in one. So I will give both a landscape overview of data stewardship in the Netherlands, and I will also use our Dutch experiences in community building among data stewards. So what I'm going to do today is just, well, we're getting to know each other a little bit better, because I'm going to continue where my colleague Celia van Gelder left on the first day, and she gave you a short assignment, quick assignment, and I'm presenting the outcomes of that assignment to you. Then I will be telling you a little bit about the learning goals. So, well, you can see if I tick all the boxes of the learning goals in the takeaways at the end. And in between, I will tell you about data stewardship roles and responsibilities. I will give you examples of Dutch data stewardship training, and I will take you on the road to local, disciplinary, national and international communities in the Netherlands. Well, you have the link to the slides, and they're also at Zenodo. So for the first step, getting to know each other. So as an introduction to this workshop, when we discussed the content of our contribution, Anna introduced the slide that it was also introduced to you. So you are a data professional, or you are becoming a data professional. And to be able to become a data professional, I usually do in our trainings, we kind of introduce ourselves, we use some icebreakers. What would you do if you wouldn't be in academia? Well, find out how multidisciplinary we are. Just also some fun questions. If you would live anywhere else in the world for a year, where would that be? Well, this kind of exercise we can't do, but I'm just really eager to get to know all of you. Luckily, Celia asked you some questions, so that gives me the opportunity to get to know you from the professional level. So she introduced on the first day, she introduced you to the model that we use in the Netherlands, so the data stewardship landscape, and are actually three types of roles, data steward roles: the policy-oriented data steward, the research-oriented data steward, and the infra-oriented data steward. And there is a big chance, and we've also seen that from, well, your answers to the assignment, that you are all somewhere in between those, because data stewardship is still in development. So what I'm going to present you on the first slide is, well, your indication of where you are in the diagram, where your colleagues are in the diagram, so we can also see, well, if all the roles that are needed are really covered in your teams or in your future teams, and you also shared some of your biggest challenges with us. So where are you in the diagram? Well, as expected, well, the biggest part of well, all of you are mainly researchers or research data stewards or researchers trying to become research data stewards. And actually that is quite a nice position to start from, because what we did when we worked on professionalizing data stewardship in the Netherlands, we saw both researchers and research data stewards or data stewards in general as two sides of the same medal. So ideally, in the end, it are researchers who are skilled in well, data stewardship. So we're not focused at training new people. Well, it's also good to have new people in the field, young people, but ideally we want researchers to have the skills that I will be presenting on today. And it's good to read that you have some of these experiences, expertises already, having a researcher background. So you know a lot already about workflows, about pipelines, about data analysis. You're learning how to stimulate data management, project management, data deposit, metadata, etc. See, these are really important topics in the field of data stewardship. It was also good to see that some of you are actually partly or becoming infra-oriented data stewards. So you deal with hardware purchases, technical support, and data management plans. And there are even some of you who are already dealing with the policy elements of data stewardship. So writing data management policies and promoting fair and open access. So some of you pointed back to Celia and I that you are actually in the center of the diagram. You have all these three roles in one person. And of course, this isn't an ideal situation. So that is why we also ask you the second question. You need colleagues to make sure that full data stewardship landscape is taken care of. So you need colleagues around you. So luckily, you all seem to have some colleagues around you, mainly researchers or research data stewards. And you pointed out also that that is a disadvantage. So not all the roles are actually covered in the team. Having a lot of researchers or research data research-oriented data stewards means that the infrastructure and policy roles aren't covered well in that extent as we would like to see it. There is a combination though, so some of you have in the team also policy data stewards, some have infrastructure-oriented data stewards. But you also pointed out there that there is particularly a lack of policy data stewards. And I think the policy is particularly important. I know there are many countries, organizations, disciplinary or local organizations that have policies. It's actually good to develop a policy. So researchers and care professionals know how to, well, what to do with regard to data management and data stewardship. But it's also good to point out that it doesn't end with a policy. So policies need to be implemented. And that is actually where research data stewards come in the landscape that we developed in the Netherlands, because it are the research data stewards who are actually the closest to the researchers. So you are actually the people knowing what it is to do research. That experience helps you to become a better research-oriented data steward, because you know what it is to be a researcher. You speak the language of the researchers. You know what the difficulties are. You know why people don't want to hear about FAIR, but you also know what you are already doing well in your research. And if your colleagues label that FAIR, if you did already a little bit of F, making data findable, or R, making data reusable, these are already tiny steps towards, well, proper data stewardship. So your research experiences are really helpful in that perspective. What you also pointed out is that that in some teams, all roles are covered, but the teams itself are quite small. So it's really difficult to make that switch from having a policy on data management or data stewardship to really promoting and realizing fair data and open science. So there is a big gap between having a policy or talking with colleagues or having a team of colleagues working on data stewardship and having researchers who really do fair and open science. Well, it's good to know that, well, we've been working on that for many years in the Netherlands, and we're all doing that in Europe and around the world. But I think it's a very familiar picture that there is a big gap between theory and practice. We're struggling with that as well in the Netherlands. So what are these biggest challenges? So some of them I've mentioned already. I'm coming back to those. So I think the first one is that the awareness of the importance of open data for scientific research. So progress is being made. You pointed that out to me, but progress is coming very slow. So you want to do in your organizations, you want to promote fair, you want to do open science, but it's difficult to realize that. And a second point that you pointed out to CDM is doing effective data management in an institution. As said already, there's a difference between talking about data management and doing data management, and particularly aligning that with the need of the researcher. Another really important topic is engaging researchers. There are always these time constraints, and it is seen as an administrative task quite often. What is also important, and that is what I'm going to talk about today, is the identifying people with the required competences. So as said already, data stewardship is something that ideally all researchers need to be skilled in the end. It should become a real profession, and on the other side, it shouldn't also focus too much on one or two persons in an organization. So just to deal with the lack of resources, argumentation that is quite often mentioned. I think in the end, if we talk about open science, if we talk about data management, these are skills that all researchers need to become competent in. And then, as said already, we need to move away from policy to, well, implementing that policy. So it's not about fair, it's about doing fair in it. It's not about talking about open science, it is about doing open science. And to realize that, you pointed out that we need a structured approach to data management. And that was one of the challenges, to really organize data management in a structural way, in a future-proof way in your organizations. And as the last point, you also pointed out that the alignment with policymakers and the funders is really important. So it's a similar situation as we have in the Netherlands. So data management plans are often asked for. But, well, why do we write those data management plans? It shouldn't be just about ticking boxes. It should about well, having follow-up talks with your colleague data stewards, with support staff, with people who support you with infrastructure, who support you with well, skills, budgets, etc. So it should again be about doing. And well, I can't solve all those challenges today in my presentation, but you will see that we are dealing with similar challenges in the Netherlands as well. So what will you be learning in this presentation? After this presentation, you're able to position yourself a little bit better in the data stewardship landscape, and you are aware of tools and information to acquire those knowledge, skills, and abilities as a data steward. So I will give you links to tools. I will give you links to training resources. I will give you examples of how community building may help you in becoming a better data steward. And hopefully that will inspire you to participate in similar communities yourself, or if a similar community as we have in the Netherlands is lacking in Portugal, that will hopefully stimulate you to start a similar community, because you will see later on that we are working with the Data Steward Interest Group in the Netherlands, and that was actually a bottom-up approach that is becoming more and more popular. So you can really stimulate taking part in those communities, you and your colleagues and other researchers in a very active bottom-up way. So let me focus on data stewardship roles and responsibilities first. So you'll recognize those pictures from the presentation of Celia. So we'll just skip them, go through them really quickly. Just focusing on the references to the links in the slide. So you will see as a takeaway that it is really, really important to dive into the details. So I don't have enough time to present all the details to you, but it's really worth your effort to go to the Zenodo community, to browse through the final report, to look at the matrices, and to look at the competency hub, where you find all the specific knowledge, skills, and abilities that are needed for you to become more skilled in your current role as a research-oriented data steward. And in the Netherlands, we actually formalized that into a formal data steward function profile. And we have a report about that as well. Celia also already pointed to our report, but it's really useful to look at the report and particularly to look at the annexes, because it will give you a really deep insight in what you should be able to do or know to do your job in a better way. So what does a data steward do? These are really tiny pictures, but they're actually screenshots of, parts of the report that I just referred to. And what we did in the Netherlands, we asked various data stewards to identify, explain a little bit about the work they are currently doing. So you will see, if you dive into the details, these are of technical universities, they are general universities, medical universities, but also universities of applied sciences. And they will give you, all these stories will give you a little bit different flavor of what a data steward does, what kind of work experience he or she has, what the main tasks are, what special topics these data stewards focus on. And I really stimulate you to look at their full stories. So it's partly these cards, but then of course in a bigger picture, but also full story on their experiences. So this is really useful to read, because you will recognize a lot probably. And based on those experiences of those 8 data stewards, or 8 different types of data stewards, we identified 5 data steward personas. So we have on the content side, as mentioned already, the policy-oriented data steward, the research-oriented data steward, and the infrastructure-oriented data steward. So you're already a little bit familiar, based on Celia's presentation, on the differences, the different flavors of those types of data stewards. But in addition to those, we also have 2 personas that identify more with the type of organization you are in. You could either be in a general data support organization or department, or you could be in a library, or you could be in a specific lab. That depending on the position you are in your organization, you could be more generically focused, so knowing about a lot of topics but not too much in detail, or you could be really embedded in a project. So that means you know really a lot about the detail, but of course you don't know that much about all the different types of data, all the different departments in your organization. So as you can see, those 5 types of data stewards need to work together. So you need the policy, research, and infra-oriented data steward, both at the generic level, but also at the embedded level, and particularly your role. So the research-oriented data steward is quite often the embedded data steward. So that again is the data steward who knows actually the most about specific elements of data in a project, in a department, etc. So this is really valuable knowledge. So you might not be expertise data stewards yet, but you are very expertised researchers, and that means you very well suit the data steward, the research-oriented data steward embedded role well. So I'm just happy, just glad that a lot of researchers are now becoming more and more interested in data management and data stewardship, because they have the ideal position for performing these roles. So if you're curious about what you should be able to do, activities, tasks, what you should be become knowledgeable about, skilled about, having abilities about, but also if you move towards, if you maybe in your organization at a certain moment are going to develop trainings. So if you translate that into learning objectives, all this kind of information is available in the competency hub. There's a link on the slide, and it's really interesting to go to the competency hub and look at the specific subtopics. So I've put on the slide of the network. So one main element is obtaining and maintaining a network of aligned expertise areas and relevant organizations by the Institute. So that's kind of the community role. And for that, we've drafted out different data steward roles and what kind of activities and tasks and knowledge, skills and abilities you need to become expertised in. So it's good to browse to the competency hub to dive into the details. And this is another print screen. So this is more on the policy and strategy level. If you have, all these types of data stewards, so also you as a research-oriented data steward, you have a role in developing, implementing and monitoring research data management. So it's good to go to the competency hub and to look up your specific activities and tasks, because they're already sorted out and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So that's a really good resource to use. So another good resource, I think it's been mentioned before, is RDM Kit, Elixir Converge. Well, I'm not introducing you generically to RDM Kit, but I did want to highlight the your role element in that. So we have actually the policy, research and infra oriented data steward, but also the role of the researcher drafted out. What kind of role is that? What kind of focus do you have? What could be the ideal learning path in becoming such a data steward? So that is actually in RDM Kit, and it is linked to specific tasks and links to pages in RDM Kit where you can find the information that you need, and information about training that could help you become more knowledgeable, and even on relevant tools and resources that would fit those personas or those data steward roles. So RDM Kit is also a really good resource to become more aware of the different competencies that you need. So there's another tool I wanted to point you to. This is a Dutch tool. It's developed together with the Research Data Alliance. So the Research Data Alliance had a thing that they referred to the 23 things, and they had 23 things for library staff about data management. And what we did in a recent project was extending that information to additional audiences. So for instance, to the policymaker, for instance, to master and bachelor students, but also for data stewards in general. So if you go to the link, the lcrdm.nl link right at the right side of the slide, the blue one, because the other one is print screen, they won't work. You can find actually a tool with lots of pointers about specific topics. So you can filter on audience. You are a data steward. So what do you need to know as a data steward? You are a researcher. What do you need to know as a researcher, etc. You can filter by theme. You can filter by data lifecycle phases. So is it about collecting data? Is it about archiving data? So if you make specific filters, based on that, you get really concrete and practical tips and tricks. And if you don't like the online tool, it's really handy tool. But if you don't like the online tool, but you prefer to print it out and put it on your desk, you can also download the digital sheets and use them actually for training purposes as well. So this is a really nice resource. It is, well, I think over 400 tips and tricks, concrete practical tips and tricks. Okay. Now I want to move to data stewardship training. And again, these resources are meant just to inspire you. So I'm not actually going to train you, because this is a full training already. And you get a lot of the topics that we train data stewards on in the Netherlands as well. But we made all of our materials available on the internet. So if you are eager to dive into details, similar kind of topics as dealt with in the course you're currently in, You are very welcome to look, for instance, at the HALIS course on fair data stewardship. It has a similar setup, so you will recognize the topics because we actually collaborated with Anna and Daniel to create this version, this Portugal version of the course. But you will find similar kind of topics with all the slide decks as well. So if you are interested in a specific topic, go to the link at the top and download that specific presentation. To browse through. It's really useful. I also want to point you to another course. So we regularly in the Netherlands train Marie Curie ETN researchers. So these are early career researchers, and we actually train them in what to do in making data fair. So I've created I've added some screenshots to this slide deck, but you can find the full resource at the link at the top. I just wanted to point to you that we have lots of materials on fair data stewardship in generically. But also how to be fair aware. And we also did some practical exercise that could help teams to get aware of the things they are doing quite well already and the things they need to progress in within their different, within their teams, having different roles, etc. So these are all the outcomes and the exercises are all included in the slide deck. So this is also a really nice exercise to do yourself in your own team. Let me show some examples. So if I'm informed well, I think the Fair Aware tool was already mentioned in this course. We actually use the Fair Aware tool. It's a really nice tool in the course to ask the early career researchers that we trained to identify how aware they were already of fair. And this is just a quick outcome. So you see some topics that the researchers are quite aware of already, but there are also some that the researchers are less aware of. And the nice thing of both our presentation, the full slide deck and the Fair Aware tool, is that it actually gives you a lot of detailed information to become more aware of that. So there's a lot of detailed explanation about, well, what about the F of fair, findable data? What do you need to do to make your data findable? So it covers a lot of really practical details. And these are just some example slides. There are many of these slides in the slide deck. Another example, findable data, discovery metadata, what to do to create discovery metadata, etc. So lots of resources in the slide deck on the top. What we also did is working on, there's this really nice article about foundational practices of research data management, and they work with 10 topics, 10 practices, and they refer it to as prepare well to prevent data disaster. So these 10 topics, they are in the picture, and they are actually explained in the article, and we used, you will see that in the slide deck of this training resource. We use this resource to make researchers, make teams aware of the things they're doing well already, but also the things they could progress on. And all the information is in the slide deck. This is just an example. This was based on the group that we worked with. What did they do well on already? And so that was green, and in red, things they could progress actually in. And we also help them, it's all in the materials or in the slide deck, help them to progress in that. So just to give some example, how to keep sufficient documentation. So really easy steps to take, to create sufficient documentation for your data set. Another example, how to organize files and name them consistently, lots of pointers to information. Another training I wanted to point out to you is something that's used internationally as well. It's the M4M, Metadata for Machine Workshop concept. And I'm not sure whether you're familiar with it. It's from the GoFair Foundation. And this is for those researchers and data stewards who are, wanted to become more competent in creating metadata schemes for their data sets. And this is just a slide with lots of information, but if you go to the website of the GoFair Foundation, you can find additional information on how to do that yourself. I know it's a lot of information right now, but it's good to take the time to browse to the various resources, because they really help you how to create metadata for your own project. And just to give an example, I know it's really small, it's just a quick screenshot for what we did in the Netherlands, working together with one of our main funders, SonMW. We worked on, actually for COVID-19 data, we created metadata schemes together with the researchers and the data steward. And in that exercise, it was really hands-on exercise, just working with sticky notes on the screen, people entering that information. And in the end, we turned that into really easy templates to fill by all the COVID-19 projects for the SonMW granted project. We built a joint controlled vocabulary for COVID-19 data, and in the end, we made it available through our national portal on COVID-19 data. But this is just an example. If you wanna focus a little bit more on, well, the metadata part of FAIR, there are lots of pointers on the website, so this is really useful to dig into as well. So the final part of the presentation is about data stewardship community building. So I want to highlight 4 levels of community building in the Netherlands. So we are working on the local level. So that's together with the universities, the University of Applied Sciences and the University Medical Centers. We work more on a disciplinary level. So I have an example in the slides as well. So from Health RI, my own organization, but we also have ODC, more social sciences oriented, and Claria, which is more humanities oriented. Further on, we have, I will present an example of national initiatives, and also point you to some international communities on data management and data stewardship. So let me just run you quickly through that. So what we did in the Netherlands, I know it's a little bit hard to copy and paste right away because there was funding included, but we have one of our main funders, NWO, which is an agnostic research organization, funding organization. And they were actually asked by the government to promote FAIR data, to stimulate organizations to work on FAIR data stewardship, and to also create a federated digital infrastructure to facilitate that making data fair. And in that program, there were different levels. So one of the levels was the local digital competence centers, DCCs. And by a very small call, it wasn't actually about the money. It was only just a small amount of money, but the fact that it was nationally promoted, every university medical center, and also the University of Applied Sciences, they were asked to subscribe to write to try to get the funding. They were actually already promised that all would get the funding indeed, and they all created their digital competence center. So we have in the Netherlands, we currently have about, I would say, 22 something digital competence centers, and they act in a bit of a similar way. You could see them as research support desks with trained people, with a community of people. Among those, over those different digital competence centers. And let me just show you that. In addition to that, there was also a program on thematic DCCs. So along with those local DCCs within all the universities, there are actually currently being created 3 different thematic DCCs, one for life sciences and health, one for natural and engineering sciences, and one for social sciences and humanities. And those thematic DCCs will help the local DCCs to fulfill their role in data stewardship. Well, on a very practical level, how does that work? So for instance, we have Health RI in the Netherlands, and Health RI is of course the, enabling data-driven health organization in the Netherlands. What we work together, and in a similar way, this is done by Odyssey and Claria for the social sciences and humanities, for instance. It are collective actions with groups of people, lots of community work, people working together on, steps in making data fair, steps in creating shared infrastructure, steps in training data stewards. One specific part of that is actually the data stewardship community building. And we have an active health right data stewardship community that unites healthcare data stewards to collaborate together. And this is facilitated by this disciplinary research infrastructure. And a similar kind of organizations is for the digital life sciences. So that is DTL. This organization is also the Elixir NL node. And Celia and I are both working at DTL and Health RI. And what we do practically for data steward, it was a bottom-up approach. We organize data steward interest groups between 6 and 8 times a year. We have a huge community, so some of you might already be involved. We have a Slack channel. We have regular meetings, as said already, and particularly that Slack channel is really relevant because it allows to ask questions to colleagues. It allows to share events. It allows to work together to create working groups. So if you are interested and want to become more more expertise in your role, have colleagues around you, I invite you to join the Data Steward Interest Group. There are a lot of international people in it as well. Join the Slack channel and ask your questions. Get the help from your peers in in an international context. And we actually have a meeting next week, Thursday. So you're happy to, you're very welcome to join that as well. You can find everything on the link on the website. And we work together as well. We have particular working groups, for instance, on privacy, on data management plans. So this is a really nice bottom-up approach that you could also take along in your own organizations. It's really easily facilitated, organized, and it doesn't take a lot of work to do it yourself or participate in it. This is more on a national level. The national roadmap is already presented by Celia. So we also work together at a national level to create open science and fair data. And that is only realizable because we have those local digital competence centers, those thematic digital competence centers, but mainly because we have a lot of data stewards or people interested in becoming a data steward to also take on this as a national joint effort. And there again is the reference to the report that I referred and Celia and I referred to already. So these are really nice reports to read and to dive into and use the practical recommendations. I also want to point you to the National Coordination Point Research Data Management. This is also a great, I think, bottom-up approach, but in the end, it was formalized as well from a more national level. But there are practical working groups with practical outcome on digital consent, on fair enabling organizations, on software, on data collaboration. There are different task groups. There's a mailing list. So there's a pool of expert. They have regular meetings, and it's really nice to dive into just to inspire you to become part of a similar kind of organization, either in Portugal or create something, or even join as an international colleague in our Dutch organization. You're very welcome to join. This is just an example. So we also organize training days from the National Coordination Center. So just a quick example, and you can see how many organizations work together. So this is really a joint effort. The last thing I wanted to point you to is the RD international community. So I'm myself involved in the education and training on handling of research data interest group of the RDA, and also the professionalizing data stewardship group of the RDA. And I particularly pointed out the professionalizing data stewardship interest group, because that is actually the topic of this training as well. So as you can see in this international community, there are lots of task groups on different topics, on how to create good networks, on certification, on business case, on career tracks, on training, etc. So this is also really nice to join. So the takeaways from my presentation. So hopefully after this presentation, I hope this stimulated you to dive into the resources in this presentation. There's just too little time for me to dive into all the details, but I really would like to stimulate you to look at the reports, to look at the tools and look at the training resources, because that's a really quick way of becoming more and more experienced. And keep also discussing your current and future roles in your teams, in your organization. Talk about the responsibilities that you have or that you see, the tasks that you like to take, or the different tasks in the teams, and how to make sure that these local teams are really fully supporting data stewardship teams. And ideally also start or participate in data stewardship communities yourself. So thank you for listening, and I'm happy to share any more details. So feel free to contact me or contact my colleague Celia for details of any of those resources, community. I'm happy to help you to create those communities yourself. You're very welcome to join and see how we work and copy that to your own organizations, either small or nationally. So whatever level you are interested in creating this, just make sure to use the existing resources out there, and not reinventing the wheel, because there are just so many efforts going on already. And happy to help you out.
Thank you, Maaike.